Welcome to episode 7 in this crash course of building an application with inside FlutterFlow. We're building a web application in this particular series. In this video, we are focusing on animations and we're going to touch on actions as well, because you need actions to trigger animations, and this is what this particular episode is all about. So without further ado, let's get into the video and let's get cracking. Okay, so here's our application in run mode. Let's have a look then. So we move over to the little plus here on the left hand side. You can just see that it's just growing and shrinking slightly back to its original size. So we're going to look at that in this particular episode. Also as well, when you hit the little plus here, we're going to see these series of animations play out with our actual colored dots. So we're going to also implement that as well in this particular video. So lots to cover. So let's get into it. So it's always good to start off every episode with maybe a quick tip. So this particular one is if you press Apple K on your keyboard, you're going to come up with the FlutterFlow command palette. This makes it really, really easy to kind of do some of the more common tasks that you would do with inside FlutterFlow itself. And it also allows you to kind of navigate to particular components or pages just by simply typing what you need. Then, of course, it will pick it up. It will then filter it down. And then, of course, we can just hit enter to go to that particular part. So, for example, we are going to make a change to our new note selector component. Now, yes, we've been selecting it up on the top left hand corner, but I can just type in new note here like that. And you can see here I've got the new note selector component. I can just hit enter on that, and then straight away I can then go straight to that particular component. I can press Apple K again. I can then go back to maybe the home page, just type home page, press enter, and I'm straight in. So it's a really, really quick way to navigate FlutterFlow. So certainly get used to that. I mean, this particular course, we're very much sort of pointing and clicking on various pieces, but certainly use that to your advantage, and then in no time you become a FlutterFlow power user. So there are two types of animations in FlutterFlow. One is a page load animation. So as soon as the widget is loaded with inside the page, then the animation can play for that particular widget. Or you can have a trigger animation where you can have an action somewhere that would actually then trigger that animation for that particular widget. Now we're going to focus on the latter at this moment in time, where we're going to focus on triggering an animation, and it's all going to be done when we hover our mouse over this little plus button here. But first, we need to actually define that actual animation on that widget. So let's go and do that now. So what we can do then, we can hit on the little plus note icon button, and incidentally we're in the new note selector component. So that is now selected. If I move over to the right hand side, you've got this little play option here where it says animations. If you just select that, and then here we have the two animations I was talking about, the on page load and the on action trigger. Now if you just choose the on action trigger, and we can now choose the add animation option, we then have 4 choices available to us, and it's quite obvious there what those type of animations are. If I just hover over there, you can see the different types of animations that kind of play out. Now we are going to want to kind of expand, and then we're going to want to contract our actual button itself. So here what we're going to do is we're going to use the scale animation. You can just hear that it's sort of growing and then it's sort of shrinking back down again. So just choose scale, and then we've got this kind of new set of options that are now available to us. Okay, so on the right hand side we have animation curve here. Now this particular option where it says ease in and out is one of a number of different types of kind of animation behaviors. So here we've got this kind of ease in and out, which kind of like starts off nice and slowly, goes quicker, and then just as it gets towards the end of the animation it then slows down. And similarly you've got ease in and ease out, which have very, very similar effects, but obviously only one part of it, whether you're easing out or easing in. So there's lots of different examples. So I've got a little website here that kind of gives you an idea of what some of these might be just in more visual form. So you can see here we've got this ease in and out. And you can see here that little dot here on the right hand side is kind of starting off slowly, it's going quicker and then slowing down, and then you kind of got this ease in option here which kind of takes it nice and slowly and then goes really, really quick. And of course the ease out will start off nice and quickly and then slow down. So lots of different kind of examples here, but this is really just there as a demonstrator. It's not official FlutterFlow documentation or anything like that, but I just wanted to explain a little bit about the behavior of some of these particular animations. So we're going to keep this one ease in and out. We kind of want that nice kind of slow and then quicker, and then it slows down, so we're going to keep that there. Now the duration in milliseconds, we currently got this set as 600. That's probably a bit too quick, so that's just under half a second in just over half a second in duration. So we're going to want to reduce that down to 300. Now the delay here is if we want to have a period of delay before the animation actually starts. Well, we're not going to put any delay on here whatsoever. And then here we've got the scales. Now we've got the initial scale, which is set as 1. So that's basically as you see it within inside the user interface. And then the final scale is where do we want that animation to go to? So we just only want to increase this by, say, 10% in size. So I'm just going to put in here 1.1. Oh, 1.1. There we go. And then 1.1 there. Okay, so we're just going to see a gradual increase. So if I now just zoom in a little bit, just to make this a little bit more clearer, if you just keep your eyes on this particular button here, I can now preview that particular animation. If I hit the little preview, you can see it sort of grows and then just sort of resets itself back again. Now what's going to happen is we're going to hover our mouse over this particular plus button, the animations are going to expand, and then when we bring our mouse away from the region of the button, then the animation is going to reverse back down to its normal size. So that's just a good way here of previewing the animation. Of course, you can have multiple animations here. I can add an animation on here, and we will be doing that in more examples as we move forward. But for now, that's how we'll keep it. And we'll come back to the apply initial state when we come to use that in a later part of the video. So that's on trigger animation, and that's now set up for us nicely. We now need to work out how do we actually trigger this particular animation. So let's move on to that now. Okay, so it's time to introduce you then to a brand new widget that I'm going to wrap around our Add Note icon button. So just going to right click on it there. I'm going to say wrap widget, and I'm going to say and choose the mouse region widget. So just select that, and you'll find now that I've got this new widget that's now currently the parent of the Add Note icon button. So what does this particular kind of widget do? Well, you can kind of see almost from the name of it actually that what we're doing here is that when we're going to use our mouse to kind of get into the region of that particular button, we can then create some actions to then kind of trigger this animation that we want to then start for our Add Note icon button. Now, of course, when our mouse then moves out of that particular region, we then want to then perform another widget animation to then kind of reverse where it's at to then move it back to its original state again. So when we're talking about the sort of final scale and the initial scale, we want to make sure we get our button back to where it needs to be. So this is a brand new concept in this particular series, depending on how much you've been using FlutterFlow, but we're now going to introduce actions for the very, very first time. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply an action here on this particular region here. Now, I'm not going to change the name of this particular widget because I don't really need to, because it's more of a kind of utility widget in this particular sort of use case here. So I'm just going to have that selected there, just move over to the right hand side, click on this little option here called actions, choose that. And we can click on the open here to open up the action flow editor. And what that will do is that will then provide us with a brand new screen for us to create multiple actions that we need to. Now, we only need to create one action in this particular example. So we could, if we wanted to, hit the add action here, and we can create our action here. But actually, I'm going to bring up the action flow editor. So let's hit the open here. And then here we are in this brand new screen. So you can see up the top here, we've got a couple of tabs. We've got the on mouse enter and the on mouse exit, which is quite self-explanatory in terms of what we're looking to achieve here. So when our user moves their cursor into and over that particular region of that widget, which is the on mouse enter, we now want to trigger a particular action. So choose add action. So here we have the action that's now going to be created. On the right hand side, we've got a series of actions that are available to us. You can see here I've got a little error that's been displayed up here, and this is because this action doesn't actually do anything. So we need to actually make sure it does something in order for that to go back to green. So you want to be sure that when you're working in this particular kind of section of FlutterFlow, you want to make sure that before you actually leave, that all of your project issues are sort of being corrected and there's nothing there that is showing red. So what do we have down here? Then we have a number of different options available to us. There's lots of different areas here. Some are grayed out that are not applicable. Some that are in white can all be added at this particular stage in what we are doing. So within this, what I tend to do here is I tend to actually look for what I need to. So for example, here I'm looking to do an animation. So what I'll do is I'll just type in animation like that at the beginning, and you can see here I've got this white option here called widget animation. So just choose that, and we've now got that action now set for that particular sort of activity that we need to occur. So on the right hand side here, you can see now it says what would you like to actually animate. So obviously different actions here have the very, very different kind of properties when you actually then have them selected and then they're presented on here. So we want to choose the widget animation. Now remember what I said back in a number of episodes ago about the kind of the naming convention. This is exactly why it's really important to name your widgets. Now I've got one in
in this particular, that has an animation applied, which is the add a note icon button. Of course, you will only see the widgets that have animations applied here. So I've got add a note icon button, just select that. And then of course, we now just want to start the animation. So that's exactly all we need to do. All these other options, you can kind of do loops, you can kind of reverse animations. There's lots of different sort of action types as well. We can stop and reset animations and stuff like that. But what we're going to do is on this one, we're going to start the animation off. So what will happen is the animation will start, it will get to its final kind of scale, which is 1.1, and then it will stay like that until we then tell it to then reverse that particular animation. And we're going to do that because we're going to move over to the on mouse exit. So just choose on mouse exit, which has no animations applied, hit the add animation. We're going to do a search for animation there. We're going to type in anim, and then it'll come up with widget animation. Just select that. We're going to choose that widget again like that, but this time we're going to want to reverse the animation. So it's at that 1.1, and we're now saying, right, go from 1.1 back down to 1.0 again. And that's all that we need to do. It's as easy as that to do animations in FlutterFlow. So just hit the little close option here. So let's fire up the preview mode and let's see if our animation plays out. Hit the little preview option up here. Very, very quickly this will load up, and this will give us that quick cue that everything is working okay. So I can just move my mouse over here, and you can see here now that I've got the little plus there, this animating. So that's perfect. Now, of course, we're using a mouse pointer here. Of course, on a mobile app, we don't actually have a mouse pointer, but certainly if you're building web applications, then you can certainly simply test that out by using your mouse. So that's good. Let's go back to FlutterFlow itself. So with that animation now in place, we can now apply some new animations actually onto our little circular dots. So as we hover over each and every one of those circular dots, we do want an animation to play out inside that particular component. So let's head over to the node dot component now, and let's get that animation applied there as well. Okay, so what we can do is we can copy that particular animation that we created and apply that to our note dot component. So what we can do is go and select the add note icon, and we can move over to the animations here, go to the on action trigger. We can just select that little option there. Okay, and we can say copy animation, because this animation is going to be exactly the same that we're going to apply to our note dot component. So move over to now to our note dot component here, and we're going to go to the circle container here. Just select that, move back over to the animations here, and you can see now I've got this option where it says paste animation, but we need to do that with inside the on action trigger. So just make sure you've got that selected before you press that. So choose paste animation, and you can see the same animation is now applied. So if I just quickly zoom in here, we should see that play out. There it is. So that's perfect for us. But of course, we now need to do something very similar to what we did before. We need now to wrap our circle container. So let's now right click on that, say wrap widget, and we're going to choose the mouse region. So just select wrap mouse region again, and we're going to do exactly what we did in the previous step. So move over to the actions with the mouse region selected, open up the action flow editor, hit the add action on the on mouse enter, and we're just going to do that search for animation like that. We do a widget animation. We're going to choose the animation, which is going to be our circle container. Just select that. That's all done. And now, quite simply, what we can do is we can actually click on these little three dots. We can say copy action, move over to the on mouse exit, and we can then choose this option here at the bottom where it says paste actions. Just select that. The only change that we need to make here is by selecting it, is move that into a reverse animation like that. So there we go. Very easy to actually copy and paste actions as well. You can either do them as single actions, or you can actually copy whole action chains. And we'll be doing that again in various episodes as we move forward with this particular project. But for now, we've got that in place. Hit the little close, and we should be now ready to preview this particular animation. But funny enough, with inside FlutterFlow, actually hitting the preview option now won't actually play out all of the animations that I have in all of my circles. I don't know why that is the case, but it will only preview on one of the circle dots. So what we need to do is we need to run this actually up into test mode now to fully see all of our animations play out across our actual component itself. So let's hit the little lightning bolt up here. Let's give that a moment just to quickly fire up test mode, and we'll come back and we'll give it a quick test. Okay, so let's give it a quick test then. Let's hover our mouse over the circles, and as you can see, they are all expanding and contracting just as we need it to be. So perfect, that's great. That's a good start for us. We're now going to move on then to actually animating those particular circles. Now, of course, that is going to require a little bit more work. So let's go and do that now.
Okay, so just by recap then, so the animations that we've actually applied to the note.component are completely independent to that particular component. But what we can do in FlutterFlow is we can apply animations to the actual components themselves within inside the actual widget tree. And that's exactly how we're going to get that effect where our circle dots are kind of dropping down from the top. We're going to apply unique animations to each of those particular components. Now, we can't keep these called note.component because we're going to need to reference these as a trigger animation. So we're going to want to change the name of them. So I'm going to go through now and I'm just going to rename each of these particular components to say note.1, note.2, note.3. If you do the same as well and you're following along, please go ahead and do that. And I'm going to quickly do that now. Okay, so they're now all renamed 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let's now apply our animation to the very, very first one. So choose a note.1 component, move over to the animations, just make sure you've got on action trigger selected and you're going to add an animation. Now, the first one that we're going to add in is the fade. We're going to keep this by default in most settings here, but let's just change the duration to be 200 like that. Now let's toggle the apply same duration and delay because we're going to be putting more than one animation into this particular sort of setup. So we're going to apply then 200 milliseconds across the whole of the animation. So there's going to be no delay here for this particular one, but we're going to add in this next animation, choose add animation, move down here, and we're going to use the slide option. So just choose slide. Let's just scroll that down here. Now, everything else is pretty well much going to be as it is. The horizontal, we're not going to be working horizontally here. We're going to be working vertically. So we're going to want to set the initial position of this particular circle to be -60, just like that. Now that's going to allow it to apply sort of 60 pixels less from the top here. So it's going to drop down here and it's going to move into the 0 position. So -60 and above is just below that little plus option there. Now if I just scroll up here and preview this animation, you can see that nicely dropping down there from the top. So let's now move here to the three dots, and we're going to say copy all animations because we're now going to apply this now into the next one. Say note.2 component. Now let's go to the on action trigger, just paste all the animations in there, but we need to be making a few additional changes here. So we're going to say where it says apply same duration and delay, trigger that to be on, and we now just need to set various different options here. So our duration here is going to be 100. It's going to be a little bit quicker, but our delay is now going to be 200. Now, if you can imagine, we've got 5 animations here, and we trigger them all at the same time. We're going to want to give a chance for the first one just to play out, and then 200 milliseconds in, then this one's going to play out, and then of course we're then going to move down to the other dots, and then another 100 milliseconds later, the next one's going to play, and the next one, and then the final one is going to play at that particular point. So we're saying the delay is going to be 200. Now, just scrolling down here, we're going to want to make an adjustment here. 60 is a little bit too big. We only want to make a change of about 40 pixels here. So it just means it's going to feel like it's dropping down a little bit more from this particular direction. Now, if I go up to the top here and I preview all of the animations, you can see now that they appear to be coming out in the right way that we would want them for our application. So let's just select the little 3 options here, say copy all animations. Let's move to note.3 component, move up here, make sure that on action trigger is selected, paste all animations, say apply same duration and delay. Now again, the duration is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be 100, but we're going to want to say the delay is now 300 like that. Now the rest of these options completely remain the same. We're not changing those at all. So let's again just copy all the animations, go to note.4 like that, and then go to paste all animations on the trigger, say apply same duration, just increase this then to 400. Everything else remains the same. Again, just copy that, and then go to the note.5 component, paste all the animations in again, say apply same duration, and this one is going to be then 500 like that. If I now say preview all, you can now see that they're coming in really, really nicely there for how we want that look to be for our application.
So I think we can now run this now up in test mode. We can't actually test this in preview mode, funny enough, and we have to run this actually up in test mode. So let's move over to our test mode now and let's see how that plays out. Oh, in fact, before we do that, actually, there's one thing I've forgotten to say is that this animation will probably not work actually if we're running it in test mode. I've just realized that we need to actually trigger the actual animation. So there we go. It's just one of those things when you're kind of describing something, you think there's a step that I've missed, and that is the most important step, because without that step, those animations will not play out with inside the UI. Because if you think about it, the very first animation for each of these is a 0 opacity. So when we actually were to preview this now, we wouldn't see these dots at all on the actual screen. So we now need to add the action here on this plus button to then start these animations. So let's move into that a little bit now, and then we can test out after that. Okay then, so within our add note icon button, this is now going to trigger these animations. So just with that selected, move over to the actions option up here. Let's bring up the action flow editor here open, and here we are in that familiar place that we were earlier. So we need to now add an action here, and we're going to choose again the animation option. So let's choose a widget animation like that. We're going to choose the one that we need to then invoke first, which will be the note.one component. So just select that, and of course we are going to start the animation. So this is where we now need to move on to an additional concept now, because there's an option at the bottom here there that says non-blocking. Now typically if I don't toggle this on, what will happen is that this particular action will wait for the animation to complete before it then moves on to the next action in this particular chain. So I'm going to need to turn this on here. We don't want it to block. We want all of these animations to, all be executed at the same time, because we put the delays actually within inside the animation itself. So what I can then do is I can then just copy this one here. So copy the action, click on the little plus, paste the action, and then in this second one, because it's the second one in the chain, we're then going to choose the note.to component, and we're going to also keep this then as a non-blocking one. So let's just copy that again. Let's just paste that one in here. So we'll select that. We're going to choose the note.3, and we're just going to then do the same thing again, just copy the action. And the only reason why I'm copying is really just so that we can just keep increasing it by 1. So just it keeps us easier for this particular video to kind of just keep us in the right order of us doing things. So let's just copy this again, and then let's just then paste this one in here like that, and then you'll find that we've got all of our 5 kind of circles now all selected with the trigger of the animations like that. I just need to change this one here to note.5 component. Now very, very shortly, we're going to expand this a little bit, because this is only going to play the animation out when the user comes along and they presses the plus button. Again, you kind of want the animation to then all completely go in reverse. We'll come back and do that very, very shortly, because there's some additional work that we need to do with inside our component. But just to demonstrate that all of our animations are working, then that is perfect for us. So let's just close that. So I'm just now going to fire this up in test mode, because now our button has that action. We should see all of these animations play out for the first time. So let's fire the little test mode option up here. Just going to give that a moment to build, and we'll come back and give it a test. Okay, so here we are running our application in test mode. Let's keep our fingers crossed, hit the little plus button. And there they are, our animations all playing out just as we need them to. Now, of course, I can come here and press a little plus, and it will just keep repeating this particular animation. But what we want to do is we actually want to close these animations and reverse them back. So it's almost like simulating the user is then closing and expanding those particular options. So that requires a little bit more setup. We need to introduce some additional new concepts into our learning. So let's go and quickly do that now. So we now need to create what is called a component state variable, and this component state variable will allow us to track the status of our circle or dots on the user interface. We're going to need to determine whether they are actually being played out from an animation perspective, or they are being reversed, i.e. they're not being displayed. And we're going to need that because we're going to need to check to know whether we need to play the animation or we need to actually reverse the animation. So what we need to do is we need to select the new note selector component there. On the right hand side, move over to this option here called state management, hit the add field here, and this is going to allow us to create this component state variable. So let's now give it a name. So I've called this is new note dot
visible, and then we need to give this a type. So this type is going to be what is called a Boolean, so it's going to be whether it is true or it is false. Now if it is false, we're not going to display, or the animation is not going to play out as far as the dots are being displayed. But if it's true, then we're going to know at that particular point that our dots are actually within inside the UI. So by us setting this initial field value as false, it means on the very first run of this, they will be false and they will not be displayed in the user interface. So of course in here you could trigger this to be true by default, so you'll kind of get this like blue sort of background here, but in our case we want it to be red, so it is false. So hit confirm. Now that variable is now created for us, and now we can now move into the next bit now where we can start configuring up the additional behavior that we need within inside the add note icon button. So let's now head over to the add new icon button, just select that. Let's bring up the action flow editor, hit the open here, and this is in the location that we were at previously. So what we need to do first is we need to add in a new action. So I'm just going to go to the top here, and I'm just going to hit the add action here, and I'm going to choose the add conditional. So just choose add conditional. I'm just going to, for a second, just going to move that up to the top here. So this is kind of at the very, very top level. So what this conditional action will allow to do, it allows to then check to see what the value of that particular component state variable that we have just added. If it's a particular value, it will then move it in one direction. If it's a different value, it's going to go in a different direction, and then we can then make it different behavior changes within inside our widget animations to either reverse or to start the actual animation. So on the conditional action check here at the top here, we now need to just move up here to where this little unset option is. So just select that, and we're going to choose this option here called conditions. So choose conditions, and then we're going to select this one here called a single condition. Just choose that. And then we're going to now need to do a check to see if the value is equal to something that we have got set. So I'm going to choose the first value here. I'm going to choose this unset option, and we're now going to choose the component state. So you've got this option now called component state, which is the one that we have just created, and the only one that's in there is the is new notes.visible. Just select that. So we've now got that selected, and we are now going to say, is it equal to false? So as we saw, it's that little red toggle that we had. It's false by default when the application first runs. So that's what we are checking for. So we're just going to choose the second value there, and automatically it's put false in there for us. But of course, if we wanted to, we could drop this down and we could choose true if we wanted to. But we're just going to choose false here because that's what we're checking for. Hit confirm, and then you'll see it's up the top here. Now, if this is equal to false, we're going to head in this particular direction. If it is true, we're going to head in this particular direction. Now, of course, what we want to say is that if it is false, then we want to apply out all of these particular widgets, these particular widget animations. So what we can do is we can select this little option here, and we can say copy action chain. Just select that, move back up here, and we go back up to the plus, and then we can go to paste actions. Now, similarly, what I could have done is I could have gone here and I could have said cut action chain, and then that would have removed them, and I would have then had them to the clipboard, and I could have gone up here and I could have done exactly the same thing, and I could have then pasted those in there. So there's two different ways of doing that. So this is great. So this is going to play out the animation for us. It's going to go all the way down here, and then on the very, very last animation, we're going to want to now say, right, I'm going to block any more progress until the animation has played out. So with that selected, choose the non-blocking option here, because what we now need to do is we now need to then reverse that component state variable, because we need to kind of then, when we then run this again, then the reverse of it is going to then be true. So let's say, for example, we come in here and it was false, and we head in this direction. We're then going to want to say it's now going to be true. And then we're going to head in this particular direction. We're going to reverse our animations. And then, of course, down here, we're going to set the reverse again of that component state variable. Sorry if that doesn't sound particularly clear, but let's add that in here. So we're going to hit the little plus option here. We're going to say add action, and we're going to move over, just going to move over here, and we're going to now look for something called a state. So just type in STAT like that, and you can see the only option available to us here is update component state. So just choose update component state. We can now need to say, okay, well, what field do you actually want to change? So just choose the add field, and the only one that's available to us in this particular component is this one. So just choose that. Now, of course, as you know, we're moving down in this direction here in false. So we just need to change this one here to then be the opposite. We're going to set the value, and we're going to set that to
true. So we can do that. We can be very specific about that, or we could go here and we can actually just say toggle value. So we're just going to toggle the reverse. Now that's going to be good enough for us because we're going to say it's either true or it's false, or when it's false it's going to be true. So we can kind of we can use the toggle. So you've got two different ways of setting the update type there. That's great. That's brilliant. That's all that we need to do. So what we then need to do is we then need to go here and we're going to then copy this action chain. And we're going to go here and we are now going to paste the actions in there like that. Now, the key thing to point out here is that what we want to do is we want to kind of reverse our animation in the order that they actually played out. So you can see here that the very first one that we did here was note.1 component. And of course, this at the moment is going to be note.1 component, but we want to give it that effect where they kind of drop down and then we reverse that animation that's at the bottom here and then work our way back up again. So what we need to do is we need to actually change the name of all of these to be then the last one first. So we can just choose note.5 and then on the second one here we then just need then to say note.4 and then of course this one is then going to be 3, which is already selected, and I'll just move up here and this one is then going to be the second one, and then this one is then going to be the first one like that. So we just choose that one there. And then of course on this particular one here we then need to just change the update component state here, and of course the toggle value will remain the same. But if you had set that to be here to be true, then you would have had to set that one to be false here. But because we're toggling, then that is good. Now the good thing about this is that if you are using the toggle here, we actually are in a position where we don't actually need these to be here, because we're kind of duplicating what we don't actually need. So what I can do is I can actually copy this here like that, and I can then paste that in here. We're always going to be playing out the same one, so I can then now remove these. We don't actually need these anymore, so I can just cut those out, and we know that this is going to play out here at the end. So hopefully that is super clear for you, but that's pretty well much. We're just going to carry out the reverse of whether the is notes dots visible is true or false. We're going to move back in this direction and reverse it. So that should be all that we need to do. So we can hit the close there, and I think we're actually in a really good position now where we can actually finally test this. So let's now run up the test mode here. So actually there's just one thing that I've forgotten to do why this is actually building, which is really, really important, because we're not going to get the effect that we need. We need to move back to our application, because what I've not done is we're not actually set to actually reverse the animations, which is really, really important. So we go back to the open here, and on this particular here, we've currently got these set as start animation, but of course we want to reverse these, right? So we just need to go down here and we're going to say reverse animation. We just select all of these and then go reverse animation. If I just move that here, then choose reverse animation like that, and then on that one we want to reverse the animation, and then here on the final one reverse the animations there. Now if I go back to my test mode, it's probably still building there. You'll see exactly what would happen if I'd left that as it was. So just wait for that to load. So if I now hit the little plus here, now they're all playing out as normal. If I then press the little plus again, it will kind of just do that same effect, which is obviously not what we want to do. But if I now do an instant reload, hopefully those changes that we've just made has now been applied. Okay, so here we go, hit the little plus here, and then hit it again, and then they just kind of collapse up like that. So there we go, really, really simple. That works tremendously for us. We kind of get that effect now where we can now really make our UI start to stand out here on the left hand side. We're now ready to move on to the next part of this. In the next episode, we'll cover, no doubt, probably this particular area down here. This is the kind of the theming options here. We can then finally get the ability to actually toggle the theme of our application. So we'll move on to that into the next episode. Thank you for watching. Please do remember to drop a like on this particular video, because your likes really do get these videos out to the FlutterFlow community. So until the next episode, I'll see you soon.